It always feels too when I'm out here like this, like I'm lowering myself in there as I'm coming through. And that he had a head dip, is what Johnny Miller kind of tagged it as. So Mr. Trevino, let's talk about him. He had a loop in his swing, as I talked about. It's like a shoelace out here going like this. So he'd take those arms away wide, which would stretch some of his muscles out of there and stuff and keep the slack out. Then he'd work it around this way. And as he put it in this area here, then you would start driving this forward, which would keep the slack out. If he took it over here and did this and then stayed centered, he'd have to throw the arms. He wasn't doing that. He was making sure the arms were driving through, like pushing through. So it'd be like here. Here, he looked like this coming in, right? And Hogan looked like way different. Spiraling out, arms coming up and through, elbows higher than the shoulders. Trevino was like, bam. I'll see a couple here with looping. Trevino. I'm going to go out here, my arms are going to go out, I'm going to collect them over here, my hips, this hip's going to follow that hip. Real compressed driving shot. It always feels too when I'm out here like this, like I'm lowering myself in there as I'm coming through. And that he had a head dip, is what Johnny Miller kind of tagged it as. So now Mr. Hogan was different in that he had sharp angles going back with a really great radius right here. He would hinge, the center of the hinge was in the wrist joint right here. So he'd push back and get that hinge there, and then it would sharpen even more on the way down. So it'd kind of look like that. You can see, you play that back, you're going to see some good angles there. So he was quite hingy on the way with slack. So he got the slack out of there by stretching the arms away from him, very wide, not a lot of bend here. And then at the end range here, the wrists would start to cock that club up. You can't go any further this way, so the momentum goes into the hands, sets the wrist, and then, you know, those levers for Mr. Hogan were incredible. Not doing him justice, but all right, hey everybody, it's Gormanator, Paul Gorman. Hey everybody, Paul Gorman here, the Gormanator, here to deliver some goods on Mr. Hogan and Lee Trevino, two of the best Texas golfers ever. Okay, now Mr. Hogan was a craftsman. He built clubs. I mean, it was said that he had 100 sets of clubs he would just throw away if they weren't quite right. Well, he would give the clubs to Lee Trevino to go test, because he knew Lee was such an amazing ball striker. He wanted to get Lee out there hitting him. So that's pretty cool. Mr. Hogan, though, was just left nothing unturned. All the way through the equipment, with the physics and geometry, balance of the club, lie, loft angles, and all that stuff. So the frequency, he was the first one to have the frequency of the shafts measured. So super cool. But they're very different styles of golf. I'm going to kind of go through them a little bit. Mr. Hogan had that great lag in there. Lee Trevino had more of a push style through, like a John Rahm, actually. Like he'd get there and then you could really see him driving the club. And Mr. Hogan was definitely swinging the club. So a couple of different styles that we can kind of walk through a little bit here. Mr. Hogan had a grip on there that like this, as we all know, very shake hands with the left and on top with the right. Arms hung very soft, and when he went back, he'd get the stretch out of there and start to zip them away with this beautiful sharp angles of the setting of the wrists, the club face open at the top, or at least under his glass plane, so to speak, and had a lot of lag coming down, and it was like there was no slack in his system. Everything just looked stretched throughout the whole swing. Now, a lot of us get up there and our arms kind of come off, so that looks a little slacky, and then we reconnect and come in and go again. And you see Ben, he was just like started with slack, This is slack right here. My arms are bent, wrists look soft, and then as soon as he started taking away, you'd see him get into these real stretched shoulder angles, and you'd set those wrists, the arms just looking like the hands are way away, and then they would get like further away on the way down looking in sharper angles. And then he'd unwind that body as he delivered that club and had that beautiful spiral out finish. And it looked like this. His elbows looked higher than his shoulders, his elbows. A lot of us get our hands higher than the shoulders, but Mr. Hogan had that beautiful high finish like this, and then would kind of unravel down that way. Now Lee was really a John Romer kind of looking guy with his follow through and push through action that stretched there and it looked like driving through. And that's kind of what you would notice with Lee. And he had kind of a loop, you know. He took that club out, looped the club around in a beautiful swirl. Now the good thing about the swirl, as it goes out this way and you start winding up, your body gets to deliver from the inside. It starts to drop to the inside, and the trail hip spins around and starts to follow the lead hip. And that's very easy to deliver from the same inside path, so to speak. Very different. Mr. Hogan getting the slack out, sharp angles here, and coming down and delivering that club fast. And around this way, Trevino, up around, not a lot of wrist looking. At the bottom there was, believe me, but those are the two different styles. There or there. So that's going to be the premise of today, just kind of going through a little bit of the differences so you can go, well, what do I do a little easier? Am I kind of fast with my wrists, or do I want to see a little bit more of a non-active system, so to speak? So it's all about, you think about it, it's all about the joints, right? It's all about how we're using our wrist, elbow, shoulder joints. And if you can link them together and get them kind of stretched out, the radius of this golf club moving around is going to be much more consistent. But if I go up there with slack and and I'm kind of loose with the joints, well, I see this a lot with the chicken wingers. And that's when the radius of the arc is just from a bird's eye view going this way, right? Going that way. So here's a Trevino look, which has a really wide radius. Why is it wide? Well, because he's taken the club away without any wrist cock. This would be a shorter radius than that. So he's not doing any wrist cock out here. He's lifting the arms off the torso, looping around and dropping in. It looks like this. There you go. Okay, that sucked there, but the first one was perfect, right? So up in arms and then looping. Okay, now I'm doing those very easy, and Lee Trevino would add a little bit of this kind of lowering of the body in there, this pushy look, right? So that's the difference there. Drive, hold, Trevino. Here we go. Hit very well. Felt, in a word, very lungy. That's what it feels like. Taking my arms out here, my body kind of shifting that way. Got the loop going. I'm driving through here. Felt good though. Okay, then we'll go straight up Hogan right away. We go, okay, I got to change my mindset for one thing, and slack, a lot of cocking, and then a redirection, letting that club come around and catching the club head and centrifugally through this way, rather than something where you would see with Trevino driving here. That's the look of Lee right there. John Rahm, that kind of throwy action is not happening. Now, mine again for Hogan. The weak grip on there. Fly it back this way. Get it going. So it just feels much faster. Hit it well. And that's kind of the very difference right there. And know this, that, you know, a lot of you out there might say, well, or a lot of you, you know, that are maybe in the teens for your handicap, I hear sometimes it's just like all my clubs go the same distance. Well, did you know that you need to ramp up the speed when you start swinging 5-irons compared to a wedge? I mean, a wedge, we know we're just going for proximity, land it on the green, on the flag, and not have it roll much. You get a 5-iron, man, you gotta get it going more. You gotta get the speed of the club going so the ball will continue to lift like an airplane. The wedge is gonna hit a ball more like a helicopter. It's gonna pop up early, go up like a rainbow, no problem. Got a lot of loft on here, you know. 48 degrees of loft is gonna get it done. Iron's got about 26. So the idea is that, hey, not only do I need to do things to move the club head faster, but I gotta do that so the ball can carry and get the distance. That's why Hogan would say, like, you know, he changed his waggle speed for shots at hand. So if he had to get a 3-wood going, I'm just going to use this pitching wedge to show you, you'd see him start to spice up the hands at the waggle here like this. You know, you'll see the guys on the tour like Finau and stuff, he's got a bunch of that because he's got such a short swing. It's all wrists and fire. So you got to get something fire. You're not going to and fire when you're waggling like in water. You know, if the club's in water, that's not telling the brain, hey man, we're gonna get this thing going here. So that's more you telling yourself you're gonna set the wrists, get the club head speed going like a hoagie. In Trevino, you wouldn't see that. You might see something like this, a little softer looking. So that's just kind of scoop there. That's all I got. Okay, so we got Trevino. Now we'll talk about Ben. Okay. Well, Mr. Hogan was way different, right? He would start with some slack like this, kind of tall, set back on the right leg a little bit. Where Trevino looked kind of over the ball a lot, right? And then would go there and drive. Ben was kind of a little set back here with slack in the arms. Then as soon as he started back, he would sharpen the angles of the body, sharpen the levers of his arms by pushing those hands way out away from him. Once they get to the end range here, then the wrist would set sharply. And then, as you know, Ben would just look like he's even increasing the angle to him on the way down. So if that's not natural to you to have that kind of, you have to have the grip on that does that for you, which is this grip here on top, which gives me a lot of flex in the hands, right? And keeps the face open from closing. So he'd whip it back like this, stretch and go. Here we go, I'm gonna do one of those. So to me, that's a lot faster move than Trevino's like a train running down the track picking up steam, like a locomotive, and Ben's just like right off the get-go, he looks like fast, just kind of setting over there at the end range here, then he's going this way, sharpening the angles, a lot of speed. Big difference. That feels super fast to me. Probably looks like medium fast. Where Trevino just like keeps picking up the RPMs on the way through and puts a lot of pressure behind that shaft with that dipping body, and body getting way over to the left here and kind of just comes through like this with the elbows. You've seen that from Lee looking like this, right? So a couple different styles, both Texas boys, could flight that ball up, down, hit all the windows, knew what they were doing for them, did it all the time, it didn't change. So we want you to get in there and see, do you feel handsy? Would you like a little more club head speed? If you're like